Page 66. The twin bodies. Emotion is inseparable. Oh, and I'm going to try and R a bit less. I just oh no. All right, I'm just going to try and not talk about it. The twin bodies. Emotion is inseparable from the body in which it is felt. And emotion is also the basis for our engagement in the world. Social understanding in the sense of empathetic connection, as well as understanding how others feel, what they mean, not only by what they say in context, as we have seen, but by their facial expressions, their body language, and tone of voice. All this is made possible by the right hemisphere. In keeping with its capacity for emotion and its predisposition to understand mental experience within the context of the body, rather than abstracting it, the right hemisphere is deeply connected to the self as embodied. Although each side of the brain has both motor and sensory connections with the opposite side of the body, we know that the left hemisphere carries an image only of the contralateral right side of the body. When the right hemisphere is incapacitated, the left part of the individual's body virtually ceases to exist for that person. I'm going to read that again because I didn't get it. Although each side of the brain has both motor and sensory connections with the opposite side of the brain, we know that the left hemisphere carries an image only of the contralateral (brackets right) side of the body. When the right hemisphere is incapacitated, so damaged, the left part of the individual's body virtually ceases to exist for that person. It is only the right parietal lobe that has a whole body image. Importantly, this body image is not just a picture. It is not a representation, bracket, as it would be if it were in the left hemisphere, bracket, or just the sum of our bodily perceptions or something imagined, but a living image, intimately linked to activity in the world, an essentially affective experience. Which is why disturbances in it lead to profoundly disturbing illnesses, such as body dysmorphia and anorexia nervosa. More than this, the right and left hemispheres see the body in different ways. The right hemisphere, as one can tell from the fascinating changes that occur after unilateral brain damage, is responsible for our sense of the body as something we live. Something that is part of our identity and which is, if I can put it in that way, the phase of intersection between ourselves and the world at large. For the left hemisphere, by contrast, the body is something from which we are relatively detached, a thing in the world like other things. Bracket in soy rather than Bordostoy, to use Satre's term, bracket. I said, that was bad. Devitalized, a corpse. As Gabriel Marcel puts it, it's sometimes as if I am a body, sometimes as if I have a body. That's cool. It's sometimes as if I am a body, sometimes as if I have a body. Some languages such as German see the body in these two senses as so distinct that they have different words for them. Leib, L-E-I-B for the first, or Körper for the second. Incidentally, the German word Körper, related to the English corpse, came into language through medicine and theology. The body there being the element left when the soul departed. The word Leib, related to Leben, lebendig, English for live or alive, referred to the bodies that survived the battle, those who were not corpse. In fact, even more striking is that the Greek word, which subsequently came to indicate the body considered separately from the person, soma, is never used in Homer to refer to the living body, only to a corpse. The left hemisphere appears to see the body as an assemblage of parts. Remember the patient of Erhenwald's, whose body became rectilinear, compartmentalized, inanimate and hollow, brackets, an assemblage of scaffolding, following a right hemisphere stroke. If the right hemisphere is not functioning properly, the left hemisphere may actually deny having anything to do with a body part that does not seem to be working according to the left hemisphere's instructions. Patients will report that the hand does not belong to me, or even that it belongs to the person in the next bed, or speak of it as if made of plastic. One patient complained that there was a dead hand in his bed, A male patient thought the arm must belong to a woman in bed with him. A white woman thought hers belonged to un petit négre. Don't need to translate for that. In bed with her. Another complained that there was a child in the bed on his left. Yet another was convinced that the nurses had bundled up his arm with the dirty laundry and sent it away to be washed. One patient believed quite firmly that the paralyzed arm belonged to her mother, though in all other respects her conversations were quite normal. The process in her case was typically reversed by inhibiting the left hemisphere by a process called vestibular stimulation. Yeah, I'm going to need to listen to the playback because I don't know if I'm a bit lost as to, I think this is if the right hemisphere is damaged. All right, playback will reveal. Examiner, whose arm is this? Patient, it's not mine. And it's 1212. Examiner, whose arm is this? Patient, it's not mine. Whose is it? It's my mother's. How on earth does it happen to be here? I don't know. I found it in bed. How long has it been there? Since the first day. Feel, it's warmer than mine. The other day too, when the weather was colder, it was warmer than mine. Examiner, and page 68. So where is your left arm? Patient makes an indefinite gesture forward. It's under there, immediately after vestibular stimulation, inhibiting the left hemisphere. The examiner asks the patient to show her the patient's left arm. Patient points to her own left arm. Here it is. Examiner raises the patient's left arm. Is this arm yours? Why? Yes. Where is your mother's arm? Hesitates. It's somewhere about. Where exactly? I don't know. Perhaps here, under the bedclothes. She looks to her right, under the bedclothes. 2 hours after vestibular stimulation, AR is questioned again by the examiner. Examiner points to the patient's left arm. Whose arm is this? Patient, it's my mother's. It's warmer. Examiner, where is your left arm? AR stares silently at the examiner. 1 hour and a half later, she spontaneously addresses the examiner. Points to her left arm. My mother's arm is colder than it was this morning. Feel how cold it is. So I repeat, points to her own left arm. On the following morning, 30th of November, the examiner asked the patient again, whose is patient's left arm, while pointing to it. So it says AR. Now the AR. It's my mother's. It's pretty warm. I found it here. She forgot it when she was discharged from the hospital. After vestibular stimulation performed according to the same procedure used the day before, the examiner raised the patient's left arm and asks once again whose arm it is. Patient touches her left arm. It's mine. Examiner, where's your mother's arm? It must be here, in the corner. She looks for her mother's arm under the bedclothes without finding it. It's pretty warm. It is a strong arm. My mother was a laundress. End scene. That kind of went in circles, but we fucking survived. What are we up to? 9 minutes. Okay. And I think there's probably a page. Yep, page and a bit to go, so we'll fucking survive. This is known as asthmagnosia, and it often follows right hemisphere stroke. And now we know. A lack of capacity to recognize parts of the embodied self is always associated with the right hemisphere damage. A lack of capacity to recognize parts of the embodied self is always associated with right hemisphere damage, never with left hemisphere damage. The phenomenon can be replicated by selectively anesthetizing the right hemisphere, which is, I think, what was going on there. It can also give rise to the belief that the affected part is under alien control. A patient described by Le Hermit showed no concern and was positively euphoric despite being paralyzed down his left side. It seemed as if the entire left-hand side of his body had disappeared from his consciousness and from his psychic life. 3 days later, however, this patient reports that from time to time an alien hand, which disturbs and annoys him, comes and places itself on his chest. He says, "This hand presses on my tummy and chokes me. The hand bothers me," he says. "It doesn't belong to me and I'm afraid it might thump me." He thought it might belong to the man in the next bed. Another patient came to believe that the left side of his body was evil and controlled by external agents, perhaps by the devil in collusion with his dead father. There is greater proprioceptive. There is greater proprioceptive awareness in the right hemisphere than the left. That is to say, the right hemisphere knows better than the left without having to look. Where, for example, the contralateral hand is in what position it adopts, even though that favors the left hand in right-handers. The right hemisphere is far more closely linked to the physiological changes that occur in the body when we experience emotion. The right hemisphere's superiority in the emotional realm is explicitly linked to this because of physiological relationship with the body. This is a further reason why we hold babies to the left. The emotional impact of touch, the most basic and reciprocal mode of interaction, is also more direct and immediate if an infant is held to the left side of the body. Excuse me, internal burp. Although studies of the effects of stroke on sexual function have shown it to be worse following left hemisphere stroke. This is confounded by depression, a common sequel of left hemisphere stroke. If depressed subjects are excluded, it appears to be more dependent on the right hemisphere. If depressed subjects are excluded, it appears to be more dependent on the right hemisphere. Interestingly, when there is right hemisphere damage, there appears to be a removal of the normal integration of self with body. The body is reduced to a compendium of drives that are no longer integrated with the personality of the body's owner. This can result in a morbid and excessive appetite for sex or food, which is out of keeping with the nature of the individual. I drew attention earlier to the fact that the right hemisphere is more intimately connected with the unconscious and automatic systems for regulating the body and its levels of arousal. For example, through the autonomic control of heart rate or neuroendocrine function, see page 58 and 59 above, there is one exception to this. There are two opponent processes within the automatic nervous system, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic systems. There is something evident that whereas sympathetic nervous control is more influenced by the right hemisphere, control of the parasympathetic nervous system is more under left hemisphere control. Parasympathetic, I think that's the calming one, whatever. Okay. The two of the sympathetic is more important for modulating heart rate. The sympathetic is more important for modulating heart rate and blood pressure in response to emotion. It is also more involved with the response to new, the uncertain, the emotionally demanding, the special domains of the vigilant right hemisphere, whereas the parasympathetic system produces relaxation of automatic function, appropriate to the familiar, the known, and the emotionally more neutral. Yeah. The special domains of the left hemisphere. But release of the left hemisphere can certainly increase activity inappropriately and will be associated with sympathetic activity. Perhaps the safest conclusion is that this area remains unclear. And that's the end of page 69. And that was it. See, we fucking survived. If you made it this far. If you didn't, I'm just glad I'm reading more. Page 70 is the next one. And it's called Meaning and the Implicit.